Hello there, thanks for joining us for our weekly look inside Syria. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. Well, Syria is a hot topic of conversation in Qatar right now. On Saturday, foreign ministers from 11 countries met here for a Friends of Syria meeting. It's the first meeting since the United States said it would arm the rebels. Britain, France, the US and Saudi Arabia were among the nations attending the talks. Delegates were discussing aid for Syrian rebels and progress on a political solution to the conflict. This is the sixth Friends of Syria meeting. The international group was set up last year to back the rebels after Russia and China vetoed a UN Security Council resolution condemning the Syrian government. Well, our diplomatic editor James Bays was at the meeting, which ended with no firm commitment to arm the rebels.
This is the final communique of the 11 foreign ministers that have gathered here in Doha. It's pretty clear that there is no new initiative, no new way forward. They are sticking with the idea of bringing both sides in the Syrian conflict around the table at Geneva. For the first time, though, this communique talking about the involvement of Iran and Hezbollah in the Syrian crisis, particularly involved in the fall to the Assad regime of that key strategic town near the Lebanese border of Qusair. This communique also saying that all countries should do more to help the Syrian opposition, but it's not laying out exactly what that involves, and it says that it's up to each of the countries to decide what extra they should give. Earlier I spoke to the Italian Foreign Minister.
Well, I think that one real progress that for me is very important is the awareness by everybody that we have to move to the famous Geneva II. Whatever the difference is or people can think, the fact is that the transitional process for a new government with full competence is the goal, the common goal by the 11 meeting here.
Another foreign minister, speaking off the record, told me that only a little progress had been made at this meeting, but he said that was better than nothing, little by little. All the while, though, on the ground, the death toll goes up. The latest conservative estimate by the UN suggests that an average of 166 people died every single day over the last year. This is James Bays for Inside Syria in Doha.
Well, to discuss all this further, we're joined by our guest from Antakya in Turkey, General Salim Idriss. He's the Chief of Staff of the rebel umbrella group, the Free Syrian Army. General, welcome to the programme. Can I first get your reaction to the Friends of Syria meeting here in Qatar? No firm undertaking by the US to provide weapons to rebel fighters. What do you make of that?
Thank you very much. We think that the meeting in Doha today is very important, and we are still waiting for the decision, very clear decision to support the Syrian revolution and the Free Syrian Army with weapons and ammunition, which we now in most need for it to defend our country and to defend our citizens. And as you know, the regime is very heavily supported from the Russian, from the Iranian and from Hezbollah fighters who are now really fighting on the ground. And we think that it is now the right time for the countries, the Friends of Syria, to take the very clear decision to support the Syrian revolution with weapons and ammunition.
Some US officials have said privately that any military aid would consist of small arms, ammunition, perhaps some anti-tank weaponry. Is that enough, in your opinion?
That will be not enough. I'm sorry to say the regime, and that is very well known, is supported every 10 days with more than 1,400 tons of weapons and ammunition from the Russian side and from the Iranian. They are supported daily. To that we can add the fighters of Hezbollah and the fighters of al-Haras al-Sawri and Iraqi fighters who are coming, crossing the border and fight to the side of the regime. And now when we are going to receive very little traditional weapons and ammunition and some kinds of anti-tank missiles from our friends in the United States, I can say frankly that it will be not enough, and the balance on the ground is now not good, and the troops of the Hezbollah fighters, the Iranian fighters, the Iraqi fighters. I'm not going to say the troops of the regime, because the fighters and the army units of the regime are not fighting against us on the ground now. Those who are coming and fight inside Syria are Hezbollah fighters and Iranian fighters and Iraqi fighters.
We'll talk about the Hezbollah. Sorry to interrupt you. I do want to talk about the Hezbollah fighters in just a moment. I'd like to ask you first about reports that rebels have already received a new shipment of weapons that have been distributed to the front line. An FSA spokesman has described these weapons as advanced. Can you confirm what these weapons are and where they came from?
Yeah, that is very, very difficult, and I think it is not so wisdom in the media to talk about the weapons, ammunition in details, and where from where, and how did we receive it, and where to distribute it. I can say frankly, we have now received a shipment of weapons and ammunition, but it is still traditional weapons and ammunition, and I can't add any details about that.
Okay, just on that issue, providing weapons to fighters, Syrian fighters on the ground, there has been some negative reaction, as you'd expect, from the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. Here's what he had to say about that.
One does not really need to support the people who do not only kill their enemies, but open up their bodies, eat their intestines in front of the public and cameras. Are these the people you want to support? Are they the ones you want to supply with weapons? Then this probably has little relation to the humanitarian values preached in Europe for hundreds of years.
So Vladimir Putin there accusing Syrian rebels of abusing human rights. He is, of course, referring to the video that emerged last month showing a Syrian soldier being mutilated by a rebel leader. Have you looked into that?
That is for us normal. When the Russian president say like that, I think he is a murderer. He is a dictatorship in Russia, and I'm not going to discuss the situation, political situation in Russia. This President Putin is a liar. He was lying and is still lying all the time, and he is saying that the Syrian revolution or the fighters in Syria are terrorists. Because we are fighting against a dictatorship, and the regime in Syria is supported by the Russians. We didn't understand why till now. The Russians, they gave 20 million martyrs in the Second World War, and they understand very good what does that mean. And now it is a very sad story when this gentleman now comes and say that the revolution now is a group of terrorists and of jihadi and takfiri, just because we began a revolution peacefully since more than 2 years, and the soldiers and the army and the police forces and the security forces of the dictatorship regime in Damascus, who is supported now by the Russians, and that is a shame on the Russian president and on the Russian policy, now to come and to say in the meeting of the 8 countries that our friends in USA and in the Western countries are going to support us, and he asked, are you going to support those? Who are those? They are peaceful people.
But this is a question which is of serious concern to the US and other allies about how much control you have over the many and varied fighting groups on the ground. Many of them say they're not necessarily fighting for democracy, they're fighting for Islamism and Sharia. And that is what the US is worried about, extremist groups becoming more powerful in Syria.
This issue is very important, and many times I said in the media that 90% of the fighters in Syria are working under the umbrella of the Supreme Military Council, and all of those are fighting for democratic Syria, for free Syria to all Syrians, to Muslim, to Christians, to Durzi, to Alawi, and to all others. of our citizens in Syria. And I can say, and that is well known in Syria, that there are some groups on the ground who are fighting against Bashar al-Assad and not recognizing the Supreme Military Council as the umbrella of their fight in Syria. Those are less than 10%. And when I am going to receive weapons and ammunition and military support from our USA friends and from our friends in the Western countries, I can't give them any kind of guarantee that they need, that the weapons and ammunition will go to the right hands.
You
to the hands of the defected officers from the army.
I just want to be clear. You're saying you can give them that guarantee?
I can give them, and I told them in our meeting, in our last meeting in Ankara, I am going to build technical groups to discuss in details with every country what kind of guarantee they need and how can we give them the guarantee that they need. We have a lot of defected officers and soldiers from the army, and they are fighting now with in the FSA in the whole country. And we have a lot of battalions and brigades, moderate fighters, who recognize the Supreme Military Council as their umbrella, who are fighting for freedom and democracy, who are from moderate Islam, and they are not jihadis, and they are not extremist groups. And President Putin, when he comes and recognize all the fighters in Syria as jihadi and terror groups, because he is the terrorist #1 in the world. Shame on President Putin, because he knows exactly what is going on in Syria. He is lying. He is lying, and he can't tell the truth for the Russian citizens and the Russian people. The regime is killing the citizens in Syria. The tanks which he sent to the dictatorship regime, to the murderer regime, the 120 modern tanks, the air jets are destroying the country, are destroying Syria. They are killing children and women, and they destroyed al-Qusayr, supported by the fighters of Hezbollah. That is I think that is very, very clear terror against Syrian people, and still going on in Syria, and the international community witnesses everything what is going on in Syria.
Let me just, I don't want to press the point, but there is one group in particular which the US is most concerned about. This is a fighting group who is battling President Assad, and that is the al-Nusra Front. Now, the leader of the al-Nusra Front has formally pledged his allegiance to the al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. Al-Nusra was established in January last year. Since then, it has used car bombs and suicide attacks in its efforts to bring down the Assad government. It has around 5,000 members. It's believed to be largely funded and trained by al-Qaeda in Iraq. And in December, the US State Department put al-Nusra on its list of terrorist organizations, saying it was responsible for hundreds of attacks and the deaths of countless civilians. Now, General, there have been reports of large numbers of fighters from the Free Syrian Army, even entire units, defecting to the al-Nusra Front. Is that true?
That is not true. That is not true. You said, I think, the number of the fighters of Jabhat al-Nusra is not more than 5,000. We have more than 150,000 fighters. All of them are from moderate Islam and from other groups in Syria. We have Durzi fighters, we have Christian fighters among the fighters in the FSA. Why the international community, why President Putin, why all the others like to forget those 90% of fighters in Syria, and they talk all the time about Jabhat al-Nusra. I think it is just a kind of propaganda to find a way and to justify why they are not going to help the Syrian people. We need your help. I talked to our friends in the United States, And Western countries, many of them came to us and visited us, like Senator McCain. He visited us inside Syria. He had a meeting with the commander of some battalions, and they talked to him, and he saw them. And I think the majority of the fighters are like those who met Mr. McCain, are normal Syrian people who left their farms, who left their universities, who left their works and joined the FSA to fight for democracy, to fight and defend their families, to defend their homes, their countries, their villages, their farms, which are now destroyed to more than 70%. When you are not going to support us and to help us, do we have to wait for help from Iran? Do we have to wait for help from Russia or China? Those who are now trying and still trying and doing everything to stop your support to the FSA, using all kinds of dirty propaganda, and they don't have any kind of human feelings to what is going on and to what is happening.
Okay, so in terms of the fight, you were talking about Hezbollah earlier. Rebels, of course, recently lost Qusair to Syrian forces fighting alongside Hezbollah. How are you dealing with the fact that so many Hezbollah fighters are now inside Syrian territory?
Yes, that's right. We lost al-Qusair, but I think all who are observing the Syrian issue know that the fight in al-Qusair was not normal. That was not fair fight. The fighters of Hezbollah, the Hezbollah fighters were supported by the Air Force of the regime. And they are very well organized and very well trained. That is well known internationally. They crossed the border, and the Lebanese army was near the border, and they didn't took any action. They know that they are coming to fight in Syria against the Syrian citizens.
So you blame the Lebanese army?
And the government in Lebanon, yes, yes. And the Lebanese government, the authority there, they know everything. We respect the president in Lebanon, but we don't know. But we know that he don't have the power to prevent Hezbollah. But I'm returning back to the battle, to the fight in al-Qusair. Those fighters who were more than 7,000 fighters, supported by the Air Force of the regime, by the Scud missiles of the regime, by the long-distance artillery, and the artillery of the modern tanks, which the Russians sent to the murderer in Damascus. All kinds of these very powerful weapons were used against our fighters, who were armed only with light weapons, with Kalashnikov, with some and very little number of RPG-7 launchers and traditional shells for these launchers, which are not effective to destroy the modern tanks T-72.
But are we going to see the same happen in Aleppo? Because these the Syrian forces and Hezbollah are now gearing up to take Aleppo. Will it be a repeat of Qusair?
The fight can be repeated in many places in Syria. They are very well armed everywhere and supported by the Air Force of the regime, and that's why we are asking now our friends in the Western countries and in the United States to support us very quickly. The time is very important factor in this fight in Syria. When we don't have the right tools to defend ourselves, to defend our cities and towns, the battle will be very dangerous and very difficult. We don't have any kind, till now, we don't have any kind of effective air defense. And what we have is just 14.5 and 12.7 and 23 millimeter machine guns, anti-aircraft machine guns, and that is not effective against MiG air jets and against helicopters, new and modern ones, which the regime becomes from the Russian Federation Republic. And that's why we are asking for shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles, and that's why we are asking now and every time for anti-tank missiles, modern one with a long range. We need it now. We need it yesterday, not now, and before tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow, that will be late. Because the regime is trying now to recapture the country, the whole country.
Well, let me ask you about that's what you want militarily. John Kerry today was saying that he believed the solution should be political, not military. And of course, the Friends of Syria have been discussing the proposed peace conference in Geneva. Perhaps that will happen next month. What are your hopes for that conference, and do you think it will produce any meaningful dialogue?
Geneva conference will not have any meaning if there is no change in the balance on the ground. That is so simple and so clearly and so frankly. And we have to say we are not waiting anything from Bashar and from the Russians and from the Iranian. Bashar is not now the president of Syria. Those who are controlling everything in Syria and who are controlling the fight, controlling the struggle in Syria are the Iranian. Ali Khamenei is that one who is responsible for everything what is going on in Syria. And the Iranian and Hezbollah fighters will not give us anything in Geneva. And very frankly, I can say we will not go to Geneva if we don't receive enough weapons and ammunition and quality weapons to show Bashar and the Iranian and the President Putin himself that we are a very powerful fighter on the ground, and we can win, and we can change the balance on the ground, and our hand will be the overhand in the country. Before that occurs, we will not go to Geneva.
You don't believe that there is any scope for a political solution, a negotiated outcome?
Nothing will be, there will be no good or no result. The Russians and Bashar and his very close circle and the Iranian and the Hezbollah fighters and all the security services of these countries are managing now to bring us to Geneva to say to the international community that the opposition in Syria is very weak. They don't control any area on the ground, and politically they are not unified, and they are just groups of terrorists, and we will not go to Geneva.
But there are so many people dying. You said yourself the civilian death toll is huge. Would you not countenance any kind of ceasefire which could lead to a political solution? That you're not interested in a ceasefire negotiation at all?
Please let me tell you something that is very simple. Everyone knows what is going now on in Syria. Let us say now we are going to Geneva. What will we get from Bashar regime and from the Russians? What should we say to the citizens, to the people, to the 5 or 6 million who are now in refugee camps? Can we tell them we are just going there to negotiate, to see the faces of these murderers? We have to be powerful on the ground, to have a control on a large area of the country, to win the battles in Aleppo and in Deir ez-Zor, in Idlib, in Daraa, and near Damascus, in Al-Ghouta al-Sharqiyya. Before that, we will not go to Geneva. And those who are saying now that we have to go because the solution must be a political solution. Yes, the solution can be a political solution, and we can stop fighting right now. Let Bashar leave the power and leave the country, and the commander of the security services and the commander of the army who gave the order to kill the Syrians and to destroy Syria, those must be brought to justice. Now, if they agree to do that, we are ready right now to stop killing and to stop fighting and to go to negotiation, to speak and to discuss the future of Syria of democratic and free Syria for all Syrians, but not for Bashar and his very close circuit, and not for the Iranian invader, and not for Hezbollah murderer.
General, thank you very much indeed for speaking to Inside Syria. That's my guest today, General Salim Idriss, the military chief of the Free Syrian Army. Al Jazeera has extensive coverage of what's going on in Syria throughout all our news broadcasts and also on our website, aljazeera.com. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.